What's going on, guys? I haven't put anything out in a few days, and to be truthful with you guys, I've been kind of lazy lately, but I need to get my lazy ass back on track. And in my last video, I ranked my favorite band of all time, Metallica's albums. All of them. And I'd say that Slayer is a close second to Metallica for me. It actually could be a case where Metallica could be my favorite band A, and Slayer could be my favorite band B. It's always been close for me with these two. And ever since I went to that show that had Megadeth, Lamb of God, Trivium, and In Flames, I've been on a huge metal binge lately, and I've been wanting to talk metal with people. And to be fair to myself, music is listed in my list of topics that I talk about here on the channel, so you fuckers can't get mad. So for this list, my list, it used to actually be completely different than what it is now. And upon listening to each of these again, I had to form an entirely new list. So let's get into it, starting dead last. The only record on here that I think is genuinely awful, that's Undisputed Attitude. And there's barely any of Slayer's original songs on here. And the ones that are on here that are original are awful. But we get really awful covers of hardcore punk songs from bands like Minor Threat and some others. I don't know much of the bands they cover. To be honest with you, I'm not really a big fan of hardcore punk music. But everything here just doesn't sit well with me. The guitar, the vocals, just everything here really just doesn't do it for me. I'm just not a fan of hardcore punk, so I don't think this was really aimed at me anyway. Alright, here's where some big changes from my old list have really started to show itself. Or just we got Diabolus in Musica. This used to be my favorite Slayer album, and upon re-listen, this is actually a really good groove metal record. A really, really good one, might I add. And I love songs like Stain of Mind and Death's Hands and whatnot, but to me, this is not a very good Slayer album. This doesn't feel like Slayer to me. And I don't know why this was ever my favorite. I actually don't know what kind of drugs I was on at the time, but really my biggest complaint here is that Tom's voice sounds really compressed. It is a good album, though. I do like Diabolus still. I still like it. And I recommend it. Next, we have God Hates Us All. And to me, I actually don't have a lot to say about this one. I did enjoy this one upon re-listen more than Diabolus. But this album kind of does the same thing as Diabolus. The fact that this album was released on 9/11 as well didn't really help its case in any way whatsoever. But there were a couple tracks on here that stood out to me on this one. Disciple being an obvious one, and Warzone. Damn, Warzone's a heavy song, and it's an underrated Slayer song. I'm a lot bigger on the guitar tone on this album. Where this one, it feels thicker and chunkier. Where in Diabolus, it felt a little bit more compressed, kind of like Tom's vocals. But it kind of, aside from that, this album kind of recycles what they did on Diabolus, and that's its biggest condemnation. All right, next we have World Painted Blood, and this was sadly the last album with Jeff Hanneman before he passed away. Rest in peace. I actually used to not like this album, and I was finding myself exhausted by the time I got to this one. But when I got to it, I enjoyed myself with this one this time around. It's not a great Slayer album, and that's what I tell everyone when I talk about Slayer. The later albums are good Slayer albums, they're just not great ones like the earlier records. World Painted Blood has some great songs on it. Hate Worldwide probably being my favorite on the album. And, well, on that song in particular, Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King both rip off some awesome solos on that song. And I love the thick guitar tone on this album. I'm a sucker for really heavy, thick guitar tones on metal albums. You'll find that with me, and I think it's because I'm a metal guitar player myself, and I tend to play with a lot of a thick guitar tone on my Marshall. So I'm kind of always looking for that. All right, moving on to Christ Illusion. So I think this is where Slayer was trying to get back to what made their earlier records great the first time. And to me, it worked. It wasn't as good as the earlier albums. Skeleton Christ, Jihad, Cult, those are excellent songs. And I'm really a fan of this album, Christ Illusion. I think it's pretty damn good. And we're back to that thick, heavy guitar tone, which is orgasmic on this album. It's just pure fucking thrash. It's what I want from a Slayer album, and it's just Slayer being Slayer, man. And I love it. I love Christ Illusion. All right, on to Divine Intervention. I think this is where people were starting to get tired of Slayer. I actually though like this album a lot. I think my biggest complaint with the album though is the guitar tone. It sounds a little too. It doesn't sound thick enough for me personally. But how much mayhem and speed and chaos is on this album, the great guitar riffs, it makes up for the lack of the thick guitar tone for me. I love the song Dito Head, I think that's how it's pronounced. And I was actually jamming it on my way to work today. It's such a good Slayer album to me, and to me Divine is the last great Slayer album out of the earlier ones. It's the last great one. It's not one of my favorites, but I think it's a great album, if that makes sense. All right, now on to a controversial pick. And this is one that in the past I did a video on, and I was actually really negative on the record. But upon re listen, I did a huge 180 with this one, and that's Repentless. I always said that this album sucked, but I think when it first came out, I was expecting something different, I guess. I don't know. I was like 15 or 16 when this album came out, and I felt just very disappointed by it in some ways. Other ways of this album, I really liked it. But I listened to it again today at work, and holy shit, this album doesn't suck at all. It's actually really damn good, and I liked and enjoyed every single song on the album. And the music videos that were used to promote some of the songs on this one were really carnage and mayhem filled, but that fits Slayer's image. My favorite songs on here are the title track and Implode. I also really dug songs like When the Stillness Comes, Chasing Death, You Against You, Pride and Prejudice, Piano Wire. I dug a good portion of this album. I love the song Implode. It's a song about hating people, and I hate people, so it works out for everyone. I think they go back to what made Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits great on Repentless, at least to me. Not quite as good as what it was back then, but I think I know what they were going for with it, and it worked. All right, Rain in Blood. Yes, I like this album a lot, but it is a little overhyped, a little overrated by people, and it's just that people say this is the greatest thrash album of all time, and it's not, in my opinion. It's fantastic. It's a great album. I love it. It's just not the greatest thrash record of all time. That, to me, could still go to Metallica and Justice for All. But I love the ferocity on Rain and Blood, and I like every song on it, though they do sound quite similar, a lot of them, which can get confusing if you didn't know. Like each song kind of sounds a little bit the same, and it all kind of runs together. So it kind of confuses me on which song I'm on. I mean, not anymore. It used to. It would confuse me on which song I'm on. I'd still think that I'm on one song when I'm 3 songs down the track list, but I still think I'm on the first couple songs. They can get they can blend together a little bit, but it's a great thrash album. It's a classic. I like it, and if you collect metal records or whatever, it should be in your collection. It should be in every metal collector's collection. I just don't think it's Slayer's best, and I mean that's all. It's high on my list, so be happy. All right, moving on to the superior album, South of Heaven. To me, this is a superior one. This album is a masterpiece. It does lack the ferocity of not Hell Waits, freaking Rain and Blood, but it's substituted for some doomy guitar riffs that are welcomed by me. And this album is heavy in that regard. I think this is the heaviest Slayer album. Besides the title track, we have great tracks like Ghost of War, Behind the Crooked Cross, Mandatory Suicide, Read Between the Lines. This is truly a thrash masterpiece with elements of doom, I think doom metal, yeah. Tom's vocals are a little more laid back as well, which, like I said before, it's welcomed by me. Alright, fucking Seasons in the Abyss. From start to finish, we have another thrash masterpiece. War Ensemble is one of the best thrash songs ever written to me. I listened to it like 60 times today, and I don't regret it. The entirety of this album is just non-stop, blistering thrash metal from start to finish, and it's done with just so much anger. Season in the Abyss should be helmed as an all-time great. I think this is one of my one of the cases where this could be my favorite guitar tone on any Slayer album. I just love Seasons in the fucking Abyss. It's so good. Alright, moving on to Show No Mercy. And I just love how Slayer incorporated a lot of styles and influences from their favorite bands. This is the debut, after all, and when you make your first album or your second album, you're taking what influences you. You take what you listen to, you incorporate all your influences into your own music. When you start making your third, fourth, fifth album, that's when you start kind of finding your own sound a little bit. And you get elements of, Motorhead, Venom, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Merciful Fate, and it's just amazing to hear all of that mixed with thrash metal. Show No Mercy to me is another masterpiece from this iconic group. It just sounds so evil, and I love it. Now, on to what I helm to be now the best Slayer album to me, Hell Awaits. Now, I'm not religious, I'm not Christian or anything, but when I listen to this album, I feel like I shouldn't be listening to it. I feel like I'm going to hell after the album ends. And if your album can make a non-religious person like me feel guilty after listening to it and make me feel like I'm probably going to perish for my entire eternity in the afterlife, then congratulations. You have made the greatest hell/satanic themed thrash metal album of all time. Everything on this album is a 10 out of 10. The riffs, the guitar tone, the vocals, the drums, the bass, the song composition. Guys, Hell Awaits is an all-time great. And I think now that I'm older, I believe that Hell Awaits is the best Slayer album. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'm out. Peace.